Hey there, 3DMJers. This is Andrea Valdez, and you are listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. This is Q&A session 12, and it is our 120th episode. As usual, since we're at another 10 episode mark, this show will be the end of season 12 and the beginning of our usual 4 to 6 week break from podcasting. So hopefully this awesome Q&A with Brad Loomis and Alberto Nunez will tide you over until March when we return. The last couple of times that we did a 3-man Q&A, we fielded previously collected questions from our website, which people usually send us year-round at 3dmusclejourney.com/QA. But this time, for the first time in a real long time, we collected questions via a public Instagram post and got a ton of questions submitted, like over 90 comments in 24 hours. It was crazy. And as you can probably imagine, there's no possible way that we could get to all of those, so we made sure to address ones that we hadn't heard before. Just as an aside, just to throw it out there one more time, if you ever want our thoughts on something and you think it's even a little bit possible that we've addressed it, go to Google, type in 3D Muscle Journey calves, or 3D Muscle Journey training volume, or 3D Muscle Journey fat loss, or whatever topic that you might want to know more about. We just might have something already on it from another podcast or blog post or YouTube video. So even if your question was great, we apologize we can't get to everything, and we hope that Google search engine treats you well. But for today, let me tell you what is included in episode 120. In this Q&A, you will hear about our thoughts on the future of the fitness industry, the sport of bodybuilding, and the entire lifting community as a whole, what Myo-reps are and how they can be used and accounted for, whether or not vertical pressing is necessary if you already do lateral raises and your shoulders are kind of looking all right, how to begin using rate of perceived exertion and reps in reserve as tools in a training program, whether or not it's a good idea to train your upper body for hypertrophy and your lower body for strength and vice versa, strategies on how to overcome body dysmorphia and how to detach from physical results, what is muscle maturity and how one develops it, and finally, how someone who coaches themselves can determine whether or not they're performing movements correctly. So, as you can tell, this episode is full of info, and we really hope that you love it since it's the last one of the season. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll be taking a few weeks off of publishing the show for our usual deload period before returning with episode 121 in March of 2019. In the meantime, if you have any feedback or comments on this episode, go to 3dmusclejourney.com or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/team3dmj and leave it under podcast number 120. Let's get into it. Here is Q&A session 12 with Alberto Nunez and Brad Loomis. This is from Lululemon. I still think you say it Lulu even though there's eyes. I could be wrong. He can let us know. What do you think will be the biggest changes in bodybuilding/fitness industry over the next 5 years? Bert, I feel like you have a really good radar on this because you keep up with the kids.
Oh, Bert will love the kids. Well, I think first let's acknowledge how quickly it has moved. It's changed in the last 5 years. 2014, what was it like, right? And then 2011, that's when, remember, Maddie started doing the YouTube stuff.
Okay.
And yeah. And I recall, I still remember, we were posing at Jeff's house. He's like, is it cool if I videotape, guys? I'm like, yeah, what you doing with it? He's like, oh, I'm going to put it up on YouTube because, there's no fitness presence up on there and everyone looks like shit. That was his words. There was so people talk about the market being saturated right now, and it's hard to stand out at the time. There was nothing, yeah. And I remember I used YouTube, but it was just to dump off videos to share with people on other platforms, right? And then 2014, 15 is when oh shoot, the IG started to come around and now it's it's a big freaking deal in so many ways. So many things can happen, I feel.
Do you think it only changes so much because of the internet? Like if I was anyone, like if you go to a random Gold's gym and someone's been lifting since they were 20 something and now they're 50 something, has anything in their world of fitness actually changed, or they just keep, like, if they're not on Instagram every day and they're not,
Mm,
I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Like
No,
does okay,
I would
like
say
does fitness actually change, or does uh online fitness topics because of famous people change because people are looking for something different to talk about?
no. I think it absolutely does because I mean, just one big one is the way like so much more good information is dispensed. A lot more shitty information too, but nevertheless, you can learn quite a bit, and it's changed the way that people lift. I feel, um, for instance, IIFYM, right? The flexible dieting
That's right.
thing,
That
that
was
was
big
like at its peak.
2014.
Yeah, yeah, that wouldn't have gone that far without the internet. So I do feel that it will find a way to impact your life, even if you're not on there. Like the trends start there, and then it leaks into the actual gym floors. Um, yeah, it's man, there's some Black Mirror type stuff I feel that's going to happen with fitness eventually. I
Well,
feel that
let's what's it called? Like online coaching. Y'all were the first, and now everyone's an online
that's a
coach.
huge one. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. It's being an personal trainer is not this weird thing anymore. Anyone can do it. Like literally, anyone can do it. I feel that I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it was regulated a bit more closely, and you needed some sort of certification to practice. Something there because at this point it's like anyone can hop on the IGs and get some crash diet. So maybe that is something that hey, I think it'd be a positive change. But yeah, yeah, personal training is you could outsource it and find a trainer anywhere around the world. That is a huge deal. Yeah, I see that continuing to grow for sure.
But what about forward?
Like new things.
Like we just talked about real briefly all the things that have changed.
Mm.
What about what
I think
will?
I think the influencer market is going to change immensely. Um, I feel like a lot of these folks aren't necessarily planning for the long haul. Um, So I see that changing big time. A lot of the big faces and a lot of the big names, I see them being, but that's always been the fitness industry. I tell a kid about Skip LaCour, they have no idea who that person was. And what they did at some point. So yeah, 5 years from now, I see a lot of new faces. I see the same platforms. Um, I don't see Instagram going anytime soon because it's been so good at adapting, and every change has been in a way a positive one so far, and if they mess up they fix it. So I feel like I mean it's just fitness is so meant for that platform.
Yeah.
um I guess what I would like to see, and I do think it's going, I think this will happen in 5 years because already where we're at now, um when I compare it to just 2014, the evidence-based side of fitness has a bigger presence, and I see that continuing to grow because if grandma's sick, you don't go take her to go see Papa Shango and he's gonna like with some mint leaves like cure her. But that's literally the fitness industry.
Yeah.
So as we grow fatter as a country, it's a positive thing to be involved in fitness. I feel that the consumer will get smarter, and the yeah, the demand for evidence-based fitness will be there more so more than ever. And maybe that's just me being a wishful thinker, but I do think the consumer will get smarter. Um,
Yeah, I think too, something I've observed, but it might just be who I, because of the sports I pick and what I follow, but I feel like we are slowly all learning to appreciate each other more in different disciplines. Like, I don't
mm-hmm.
feel like so many bodybuilders completely shit on powerlifters, completely shit on CrossFitters, and then like Olympic
Mm-hmm.
lifting is becoming a thing
Yeah.
because CrossFit started, and I feel like now, and some old Olympic lifters have gone into powerlifting. Like, I feel like a lot of the strength sports are, some people travel through them a little more, but more importantly, I think that we're all aware of each other a little more and know. I think there's a lot of people who are aware that there's a good way to do all these sports and a bad, laughable way to do all these sports.
Yeah.
Whereas it used to be like everyone that does that is hilarious, you know, and like strongman's becoming more popular. So I mean, I don't know. I'd like to see that continue.
It's kind of like a big track and field event. Like we have the throwers, we have the jumpers, we have the, you know, and we're all just there partying, kind of doing the same thing. And to everyone else, we're freaking weird. So, like, you know, yeah, people have options. I do like that idea because it used to be for fitness. It's like, and I've said this before. Like the motto was like, "You're ugly, but we can help you." That was fitness before, you know, and. Yeah, now you could pick something that basically moves you, and then you'll start moving. And I think that's always a positive thing. How about negative things? Any negative things that you guys are like, I hope this doesn't like...
Oh, man. One immediately came to mind, and I'm scared to say it, but because of that, I think I should say it. I think the continual addition of more subjective divisions in bodybuilding competitions will continue because that's where money is made. That's where people, you know, there's more federations, there's more divisions.
Categories, yeah.
There's now diet-based competitions, like there's vegan bodybuilding shows. There, you know what I mean? So like stuff like that. I don't know if that's, I know for a lot of people, they think that that's empowering and a good way to get certain messages out there. But as strictly the Puritan sport of it, I feel like we talked about this in a podcast too. Not like getting smaller, but it's like for it to be as jacked and shredded as possible as a bodybuilder, right? And then you have divisions where you can win being a little less jacked and a little less shredded, a little less jacked and a little less shredded. You know what I mean? So I feel like
it's that right combination that fits you. It's like, you know, this is a division. It's only people who can lick their elbows, you know? Yeah. And people feel like it's doing them a favor. It's doing everyone a favor. But at the end, it's taking, I think, like the spirit of sport away from like when I think of sport, like, shoot, like there's kids that are getting cut from their like high school football team, and that's just part of it. You know, it's like you deal with it, like, and if you can't come back next year,
so I guess that is a thing, right? The participation trophy is becoming more and more in adult sports, and I guess that might not be a negative, but it's something that in my brain bothers me personally. But whatever. Man,
I think
I immediately regret saying that, but
I was thinking.
No, that's people.
That's what I was thinking. You put into words what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, I went and judged a bodybuilding competition, and I think there was 45 competitors and 2 bodybuilders.
Oh, really?
And I'm not kidding. 2 bodybuilders at a bodybuilding competition. You know, and it kind of scares me. You know, I know where I would like it to go, but at the same time, the writing on the wall is telling me that it's just going to get more watered down, and it's just going to be kind of a dying thing.
Yeah.
It'll be cyclical. I think it'll come back again at some point. I mean, look at powerlifting. When everybody started getting divided in powerlifting into geared powerlifting and multiply and 8-ply, and you know, pretty soon people were like in exoskeletons. It really divided and almost killed the sport. You know.
Yeah, it did.
Now look at it. Now it's kind of coming back again. You know, and it's a cyclical thing. But I just kind of wonder when, you know, it's going to be like need to be revived and how it's going to happen. I'm hoping that it kind of like ends up being kind of like Bert said, a track and field type of event where you go there and, you know, maybe an athlete's doing a powerlifting meet and he's doing a bodybuilding competition and he's doing, you know, something in CrossFit, you know, or like at the team sport, you got your body, you got your CrossFitter, you got your powerlifter, their team, awesome, you know, and I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I know that's Eric's like fantasy is like just a superhuman competition. Okay. Damn, that was a long time on one question. That was good. Any other facets we missed on that one, Bert?
Last thing, negative thing. I feel that people are going to start, and I don't think fitness should go in this direction, but they're going to start embedding maybe their political agendas a little bit more with fitness, and it just divides people. So that doesn't. So, just there's these real problems going on in the world, and I think sometimes already they do kind of make it into fitness, and I don't see that getting any better anytime soon. I see it getting worse, in fact.
I don't know what you mean by political. Like politics in the industry, or like literally?
Oh, just no, like literally like politics. Like I don't know, like yeah. So like I remember. So here's a good example. Like Mark Bell was on his IG with like "Make America Great Again" hat, right? And it just threw up a huge shitstorm. And I guess both sides were kind of fault because like Mark, you know what was gonna happen, but then like these people were like, Mark, we're like boycotting your products because of so stuff like that makes it on there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I see that, and that only divides people at the end. I think fitness should be, it's something that's like it's an escape for many of us, and we already have issues like, and we're getting better at this, as you mentioned, with the whole like this is a CrossFitter, that's a powerlifter, strong, but we're all studs in our own way. We just have different goals, and I think all that does is like further divide people even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a huge one.
Yeah,
so,
and that's just like culture in general, though, right? That's just internet culture in general.
Yeah,
like fitness, like he could have been a real famous, I don't know, woodworker and worn that hat and still pissed off. I don't know how many people.
But see, I just don't see that it was that way when like Lee Haney was doing this thing back in the '80s, and Miss Olympias with the little like hairs and the leotards. It was just, it was more about hey, like this is what you believe, this is like how you see the world, but you know what, we enjoy this thing,
Yeah.
and let's stay on topic. So
yeah,
anyhow,
and there's always sorry. There's just like when you said fitness industry or whatever, there's like actually in fitness like trends of diet and training and things that we've learned in the science, blah, 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 right? And then there's the business of fitness, which you've talked about a lot. And then there's like the actual sports. And I think we kind of hit on all three of those. Like they're all going, it's not always the same. Like there's athleisure and then there's athletes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the fitness business is, in my opinion, is huge right now. I just can't get over like just the gym that I sold to the folks down the road here. They're thriving right now. And I think it's just because fitness is such a big kind of a niche thing. I mean, not niche, but just it's almost like a trendy thing right now. And I think that part of it's only going to get bigger. In fact, if anything, that could push out some of the other things that we talked about.
Yeah. All right, guys, we've talked about that one a long time.
Yeah.
Did we beat it? Did we kill it? Okay.
Beat it.
With this is from Bogdan, BOGDANZAMFIR.
So I'd say it.
Bogdan's okay. Question is, vertical presses, are they mandatory for bodybuilders, or will someone be just fine doing lots of lateral raises and rear delt exercises, since the OHP variations mainly hit the front delt, which is usually hit by most pushes anyways? So if we only care about how our shoulders look and we don't need OHP strength necessarily or give too big of a shit, do you have to do it? Brad, what do you think?
I don't know. I don't really have any experience myself or any of my athletes not incorporating some sort of an overhead press, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I've never had anybody, and I don't know of anybody. Of course, I don't follow very many people, but I don't know of very many people that don't do any pressing. They just do laterals, side lateral, front lateral, rear lateral.
Well,
so I don't know the right person to answer this, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, and he says, too, since the OHP variations mainly hit the front delt, which get hit by all the pushes anyway. So, I mean, if you do an incline press and laterals and rear delts and they're not like a weak point on your physique, I would think that'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think,
Yeah,
Greg?
I don't know that I really know the answer to this.
Well, I don't think there is an answer, right? When he's saying like, is it mandatory? I mean, if you really think about it, all this shit's like made up, right? Anyways, for us. So, because we know a lot of, I don't say like we personally know, but like, for example, basketball players, like only in the last 20 years really does everyone weightlift. There was a long time they didn't, but a lot of them have great delts because they shoot balls all day. And it's like, I don't know if they actually load overhead pressing, but they definitely raise their arms all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that was a good example or not, but you know what I mean? Like our bodies do stuff. Our bodies adapt. And if I imagine if you're doing rear delt flies, lateral raises, an incline, or even like a bunch of push-ups, maybe like push-ups, I don't know.
I feel that out of the big six movements, when we're talking about, the six compounds that if you do, you'll get a pretty balanced physique. The overhead press is probably the one, if I had to let go of one,
Yeah.
the one that would be the easiest to let go. I personally don't overhead press.
I was gonna say, I feel like I don't feel like I like as Brad was saying, there's no one I follow or know that is like, I don't do that. But I know there's a lot of people that I'm like, I don't see a lot of OHPs around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. I feel like personally shoulders are made with lateral raises, um, and rear delts are super. I'd say people don't realize this, but I think they're just as genetic as traps in some ways. Like you have them or you don't. I've never really seen a good rear delt transformation.
Well, I gotta think if you
Yeah. So like for
deadlift,
example,
if you barbell row, or if you
yeah.
pull ups, like they're there.
Like you can't tell now because I'm fat, but on stage I almost usually have like the best rear delts, and like I've never really dedicated time to them. Um,
I mean, but you do a lot of
it's
pull ups
but yeah, but the from the pulling
and
is
pen
is where
lays.
it generally comes from. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's kind of the same thing with the front delt. It's like seldomly do you see someone who has, even like with your casual gym rat who has an anterior delt that's not at least somewhat developed. Like that's usually the first little cut that comes up.
Yeah.
Right? Like even with women who it's like, oh, she started lifting 3 months ago, and now she has that little line right there. Hey, good for you. You're heading in the right direction. So I feel that's probably the one that you can get rid of if you like. I feel that impressive shoulders are built with lateral raises beyond anything else. And if there is one movement that's essential for bodybuilders, shout out to Cliff Wilson because he said this the other day, is probably the lateral raise. Like you need to get good at those and you need to do plenty of those.
Yeah. I was gonna say too, like I know some people were like an upright row is their staple.
Yeah, yeah, that some people, it's an easier movement to master for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get plenty from that. I think it's a pretty fun movement because it's like the way your humerus rotates. It's like you get a little bit of every head. But
Yeah. What do you think about that, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know that I am the right person to consult with this because almost everybody that I know, likes overhead pressing.
Or does it to
Except
be
for Bert now,
balanced?
which obviously I didn't know Bert as well as I thought I did. And so yeah, that's kind of our prime mover. And then of course we finish things off doing side lateral raises and upright rows, and I think some people even bag on front raises, but I myself I enjoy doing front raises, and I know a lot of people that kind of feel like their front delt kind of works doing a front raise. So
I mean, we know a lot of powerlifters with amazing body parts that never get worked directly. I mean,
yeah. Well, and I was thinking of gymnasts too. I mean, gymnasts are jacked. I mean, I have no idea what a gymnast weight training regimen is, but
I
at
mean,
the
they
same
spend a lot
time,
of time on their hands, like an isometric overhead. A lot.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their backs are incredible. Their lats are incredible,
Well,
just
because
from
it's a
like the
lot of
ring
pulling
work
down.
and
Yeah.
all that body weight stuff. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I just, with bodybuilding, there's so many, like when people ask, is it okay? Or can I do it like this? And it's just like, if you can, you can. In my stupid, humble opinion, it's like, if the goal is to build your body and you have shoulders and you don't do overhead press, then the answer is yeah. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Unless you think it's a weak point and they're not growing, then I would say you should probably try to do things for it. But if it's not weak and you already don't have a problem with it, then of course you can do that. Then
Yeah, I think with bodybuilding, it's kind of one of those things where A, weightlifting is mandatory, but B, outside of that, nothing is mandatory.
right? Yeah. And when we say weightlifting, that
square
doesn't.
him.
Yeah. Well, and when we say weightlifting, that also can be body weight, as we've talked about. It can be resistance to external forces. It could be like there's just not like it doesn't have to be like I went to the gym and lifted weights to grow something. There's a lot of runners with amazing calves who've never done a calf raise.
Yeah.
There's a lot, you know. So I mean, yeah.
I love that commercial where the cyclist has got the calves that are like just outrageously disproportionate to the rest of his body.
Yeah. There's a lot on one hand, like we say it all the time, like there's a lot of principles, but once they're hit, like you said, there's a lot of rules that we just make up. Okay, I think we did that one good. So can you? Yeah. That's so funny though, because you're like, I don't know anybody who does an overhead press, and then Bert's like, so I don't overhead press.
I don't overhead press. I'm like, wow, I just learned something new.
Yeah.
And Bert was a good overhead presser. I remember him pressing like, didn't you press the hundos once, Bert, over your head?
Yeah. No, I've gone up there, but
yeah, that's a good.
I don't. When I go lateral volume, that's when I see the biggest difference. So, but not so much with overhead pressing, and I feel like it's almost sometimes for me too contrasting that compared to the horizontal press I want to get good at, so it kind of makes me suck at that one a little bit more.
Yeah, like you pick the places you want to attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, that's a goodie.
Okay. Next question. I'm gonna skip to this one. Okay. From I think this person's name is Jane, and then she put the years of her birthday in the middle because it's like J1, A9, N8, E2. So I think it's Jane. She asks, how can I encourage an athlete to challenge her strength? She refuses to apply RPE or RIR, but it looks like she's working too conservatively, although she insists it's hard. We kind of talked about this beforehand. What do you think, Brad? How do you encourage, or is it even something that you should encourage someone to use RPE or RIR?
I mean, I think it's so useful, and I think that we overlook sometimes how almost automatic we get to know that just through years and years and years of training.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if it should be encouraged to, beginners. Sometimes I think that you just have to kind of learn what your limitations are with certain loads, until you get good at those loads. Yeah, that's a difficult question, because I know that there's the individuals that are out there that it's like, wow, that person's got one left in the tank, and they get like 4 more, and they all look the same, and then there's those others that's like, okay, yeah, you got 3 more, and then the very next one is just like, wow, they fail, like that quickly.
Yeah.
So that's such an individual thing, and you would want to encourage it in a positive way, I feel.
Right.
I don't think that you would want to encourage it such that, you are much stronger than you think you are, and you need to push yourself harder. Yeah, I think that's something that, maybe in a more trained individual, maybe you can just run blocks of training where maybe their last set, they keep strict form the whole time until they can't keep it anymore, or they just keep doing good reps until they can't do them anymore. I'm not really sure, but it's
Yeah.
like you said, there's times when you don't, look like you're working hard, but you're
I
dying.
hate it.
And I think it's because you're so, I don't know, if it's because you're such an athlete. I'm not sure.
I hate how I will film something that I'm like, man, this is it. This is a big set for me. Or this is like about to be like a 95% snatch, or this is about to be the heaviest I've squatted in 3 months or something, right? And I'll film it, and it's like so hard, or I miss it even, or whatever. And I look at the video, I'm like, what? Like, I just don't look as intense as I want to. Like, I look like such a controlled, calm, slow pansy when I lift, but when I know it's like really hard, it makes me so upset. I want to look way cooler. I hate it.
That's just how some people look, though. Like,
I know, why?
like I think, like Russ will, like, you can't say, that he's not lifting heavy, but when you see him like lift, like whether it be in comp or an important training day, it's like, it's smooth, but it's like, okay, well, that's 700 pounds on the bar. So,
yeah. Well, mine's not
won't
700, but I swear.
But nevertheless, you're going hard,
Yeah,
so,
like I'm going, and
yeah.
I can see it, and I can fail. And like, I'll do a spotted AMRAP where it's like I obviously failed. The person's like, rack your squat. I just helped you. And I watch it, and I'm like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
I just want to look like a beast, and I can never do it. It's okay. But I mean, that's a good example, though, of like in accordance to this question, like,
yeah,
it's so hard to tell. Well, I guess there's a lot of things, right? So maybe we fucked up this question by not defining these things first. But so RPE, rate of perceived exertion, and RIR as in repetitions in reserve, right? And these are labels that we use a lot. It's a way to describe how far or close you are to failure, right? And my dumb brain immediately, or like weird brain immediately, is like, well, is that even... We just made that up. So that's a really useful tool for us. I know that we use it a lot as coaches and as a company, as prescriptions and as feedback from our athletes, right? But I'm sure there's people out there that describe it as like really, really hard, kind of hard, was easy. There's other people that describe it as like that was 80% effort, that was 70% effort, that whatever. Like, so teaching your athlete a system so that they can give you feedback is a good thing, and maybe telling them that way, like, hey, I know this is not something you feel like learning, but maybe we can label it something different so that I know that you and I are establishing some groundwork for me knowing how hard or difficult this was for you.
Yeah, that's a good positive way to encourage somebody to use a system like that.
Yeah. And you're
it
right.
sounds
Like
they're doing in-person training.
I don't know, because we can send videos. I mean, maybe they send videos.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure. But you know what I can say, though, personally, anecdotally, entirely for me, was until I did, there's a lot of years in my early years of structured training. I won't say a lot, like maybe 2 or 3 of my first few years of structured training, where I would do a lot of percentage-based work, or there might be RPE prescription in there, right? And I would go up to my 8 or 9 RPE and what I thought was in my brain, and then every training cycle or whatever, I would test with usually a 1RM at the beginning, and then a lot of times it would be AMRAPs, and I would think I've hit this is a safe place to end an AMRAP, right? And then a year or 2 later, I did a couple of training cycles where my AMRAPs were assisted. Like I said, it would go till it was a squat cycle where I would have someone spot me holding the bar, and then when they would actually help me up, I would rack it. And I was very surprised by how much more I had when I didn't know, like, when I didn't know whether I was doing it or not. And so that was a really big learning experience for me. And from then on, I felt like, oh, this is what it's really like, So I feel like it's easy to replicate maybe on a smaller scale with like a bicep curl till you literally can't lift it anymore. But and there's not a lot of safe ways to do it. But I found that personally that was a way for me to learn the difference between like, oh, I've never done this number before, hopefully I can do it, versus like, do this number that you know you can do until you literally can't do it anymore and someone else told you can't do it anymore. And I know outside of a lab that's hard to replicate, but I don't know where I was going with that. That there's different ways of learning it.
And you talking kind of made me think of something that I do frequently, because I'm reading the question now and it says, how can I encourage an athlete to challenge her strength? And a lot of times I do exactly what you just described, Andrea, but in kind of a more subtle way.
Okay.
I'll just let an athlete train, for a block of training, and then for their deload, I'll say, okay, what I want you to do for this deload is you have been doing these loads for 6 reps, 5 reps, whatever. I want you to go up, and I want you to go up what you feel like is a comfortable, and I want you to do 2, and that's it. And almost every time somebody that has been doing 6 reps are like, well, if I've been doing this for 6, I know I can go up a good amount for 2. And they end up being surprised at what they can do, like you experienced, Like if I'm only doing 2, I'm going to go up 10 pounds, 15 pounds, whatever. And it's just kind of an eye-opening experience. It's like, oh, wow. Now I know what it feels like to do something heavy but doable, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. So yeah, that between you, sharing your experience and then me actually reading the question, because I am such a visual person, that would be the way that I would answer that question.
Yeah, how do I get them to
You don't even use RIR or RPE. Just let them do something.
Yeah, I guess that is two things, right? How do I teach someone to learn what hard actually feels like? And then another thing would be like, is she just resistant to these labels, or does she not want to think about it in this manner or whatever? So yeah, that is, I guess, two different things. What do you got, Bert?
I feel that not so much the people we work with necessarily, but I feel that there's certain demographic of coaches out there that I think this is more of an issue when you have female trainees.
Okay.
And I mean, that was confirmed a woman, I believe, who was the trainee here. Because when you look at most dudes, when they get into the gym, it's like they're like dummies, if anything. Like they're loading way too much on that bench press. They're loading so heavy sometimes that like the range of motion is severely compromised. And women tend to be kind of on the other end, where there's this fear that like this might be the first thing in the cases of some women where like it's like the first time they've exerted themselves with weights like ever. And it's scary and it's intimidating. Like even now, like with my big heavy sets, where I'm kind of unsure of, like it's like you could be calm, but your heart's racing, So I feel that what you can do is not necessarily like speak that language yet to them, but encourage them to be progressive with their lifting. Because when you encourage, a certain behavior, it's more likely to get done again. So like, they come back and you're like, oh wow, you with the same form, you've added 5 pounds to your squat. That's awesome. I think we can do that again. And then eventually, it does get to the point where you're at some point going to start to redline them a little bit. And then maybe at that point we can start talking about, because they will be more in tune, if they over the course of 10 months have added 70 pounds to their 5x5 squats or something like that. Then we can kind of start talking about how it feels and, how what did you think was going to happen before you took that last rep, and maybe it was the first time they've ever like failed a rep. But I think first and foremost, you just encourage progression and see it as a very positive thing in your weight training. And then eventually it's just going to get hard. And then because they have made progress and they've dipped down for some reps that they were moderately unsure about, they might be able to better identify and because of that help you when it comes to the back and forth lingo, the communication. But I think you encourage progression and you make sure that they know that when they do it, it's a very good thing, and we should do more of this.
Yeah. And I bet that is scary. Like you said, if someone's 20, 30 years old, female, never like physically exerted themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe you could start with something smaller, like we said, like with one of your isolations. Like, I want you to use lateral raises till you can't pick your arms anymore in this particular set this one time. And then see where that transfers to. Okay.
And showing them what failure is on safe things. Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing in-person training, way back, 10 years ago, I would just encourage athletes, weightlifters, trainees, whatever, just don't even think about how many reps you're going to do. As far as you're concerned, you're going to do one perfect rep. And then when you finish that perfect rep, you do another perfect rep.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you finish that perfect rep, you do another perfect rep. And I would just simply break it down. You're not doing a set of 5 or a set of 6 or whatever. I just say you're doing 5 perfect singles. And a lot of times that would kind of take away a lot of their fear too. Plus, they were able to quit when they wanted to. They were able to say, "Wow, that one was really hard." Okay, well then rack it. Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we did as good as we could, knowing what we knew on that question.
Yeah,
because it would be different if it was in person versus online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot more you can do there. Okay. Just hopping in for a quick reminder that we have recently released the 3DMJ Lifting Library 2.0. The Lifting Library is our all-in-one video course solution to perfecting the essential movements and exercises that every bodybuilder needs to know and execute well. Once you buy this thing, you have lifetime access to the course, which will increase in size, quality, and price year after year as it grows over time. As of now, we've just increased it from 12 chapters to 18 chapters, and it covers the big 3 movements: split squats, good mornings, pull-ups, dips, lateral raises, calf raises, RDLs, hanging leg raises, overhead presses, and a whole lot more. The library includes extremely high quality video tutorials for every movement, key performance strategies for executing the lifts correctly, and most importantly, detailed programming considerations that will tell you exactly how and why you should include or not include certain exercises into your training program. So go to liftinglibrary.com, sign yourself up now for lifetime access, and every few months you'll be notified of when you have new content in your course so you can log back in and build upon your training education for years to come. Again, that's liftinglibrary.com. Go there and sign yourself up for the free trial today. This one is from BG Theory, Thierry, I think. What do you think about going... What do you think about going for strength and intensity for the lower body and hypertrophy and volume for the upper body for people who have a lagging upper body to let it all catch up? We also had a similar question from Bangering Barbell. We might have like 2 or 3 people ask something similar, but this one was just worded kind of succinctly. So, training different halves of your body for different goals. What do we think about that?
I have this other one that's very similar. Do you want me to read it real quick?
Sure
It's
thing.
like almost the exact same thing.
Go ahead.
He says, I lift mostly for fun and body count goals, but also want to compete in powerlifting twice a year. I have big legs and a relatively smaller upper body, and I would like to balance out my physique. But I consider keeping my lower body volume maintenance while pushing my upper body. And he gives some context as far as, what level of skill he is, etc.
Yeah.
I love this question myself.
Let's hear your answer on it.
I do have at least 3 individuals that I coach like this.
So I guess it's a yes. That's okay.
But and actually, I have two opposite individuals. Like this gentleman, there's a guy that I coach he's got big legs, mm-hmm. and so we keep volume very low on him. It's not easy, I would say, but we do keep volume pretty low. And so with him, we do a lot of auto regulation. I says, okay, your rep target on your lower body is 3. And I don't care what weight you use, but use something that's appropriate for 3 repetitions. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do our squat, and basically no bodybuilding movements. We're going to do squat, leg press. I think that's really it, to be honest with you. But on your upper body, I want you to use, rep targets, loads that are appropriate for a rep target of like 10 or mm-hmm. 12. And I want you to think to yourself multiple sets of 12, and now learning about Myo-reps, I may even start incorporating some Myo-reps. But, and I've got the exact opposite. I've got someone who's got, for lack of a better term, he's looks like he shit popsicle sticks for legs. And he admits it. He says, you know what? Back when I was a kid, I think, let's go train legs today. I don't want to train my legs. Let's go do bench. You know, or let's go train back today. I can't see my back. Let's go do bench. You know. So with him, it's the exact opposite. He's very strong in his bench, and plus he loves being able to bench, you know, 6 plate, 15. So I said, okay, well, you know what? Let's bench, overhead press, row. That's it. Rep target 3, you know. But lower body.
All the things. Huh?
All the bodybuilding things, all the squat things, higher rep targets. That's kind of how I treat those individuals.
Okay. So is it okay? The answer would be yes. And this is something that we practice. You too, Bert?
I think just to make it clear, because the first question was like, I'm going to do strength stuff for the lower body and then high rep volume stuff for the upper body because the lower is lagging, right?
Yeah, he worded it as strength / intensity for lower and then hypertrophy / volume for the upper.
Okay. This kind of plays off the myo-rep thing. Because like, what is the muscle growth, like rep range? Like, I think, like, for example, powerlifters with the pitch shark, they're doing some funny rep ranges. Like they're doing 20 to 30 reps because they think, you know, like muscle growth is volume. So if I get like 200 reps, that's a lot of volume. So it's going to help me get jacked. And it's like, no, it's not about just sheer volume. It's about the number of high activation reps. And that's why there really is no rep range. It's more so, you know, what's your preference, and then also what rep range fits that movement. You know, like you're not going to do 5s with lateral raises, but it might be an option for squats. It might in fact be better for squats and doing sets of 15. So I guess what I want to point out is that you might be doing less volume with like lower rep ranges, and you might be doing like more total reps with like the higher rep ranges. But what we always have to pay attention to is like how many of those reps were like beyond RPE 6. So for example, when you take a 5x5 with, say, we'll do 80%, you know, that's pretty reasonable. Basically all of those reps, or close to all of them, are high activation. All of them, like they're hitting the fast twitch muscle fibers right away. And if you were to pay attention to like what those last 5 reps look like compared to the last 5 on a set of 10, like the velocity would be very similar. So if we were to just have someone, we don't see the weight, but we just look at how quickly like their humerus is moving on the bench press, like the last 5 reps of a bench press and the last 5 reps of or the first 5 reps of a hard 5 rep set, they basically look identical. So yeah, I think that's there's a huge confusion there. Like when they think of volume, people think of, or when they think of muscle growth, they think of high rep ranges, and it's like, no, it's time under valuable tension. And the reason that I think long term the higher rep ranges do work is because they're just less demanding on connective tissue and on your time as well. Because hey, that 5x5 is going to take a while to do it right, you know. Whereas if you get a similar amount of high activation reps via a high rep range system, it might take you a fraction of the time. So just something to point out, because people see it that way, and that's why you get bodybuilders that you know, it's like they lift it mostly in the low rep ranges and they do really well and they're jacked, and then you have people on that side. So yeah, there's, I guess, no look per se that a certain rep range gives you, because I think that's just a huge confusion.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, Eric shifted, like the pyramids or whatever. Like there's a lot more emphasis on hard sets, the number of hard sets, and that's kind of along the lines of what you're saying with your Myo-reps. Is like the whether it's rep 1, I lied. Whether it's rep 3 or rep 10 isn't as important as like, was it hard when you got to that point? Yeah.
So you could still grow off low reps. It's just
not as efficient. Like, right? Like when Brad says, I have my lower guy who has a great lower half working to 3s, and it's like, well, that's okay. And if he only did 3s for his weaker body part, he'd be in the gym for like 4 hours kind of thing. And so Brad needs to get him within this reasonable amount of time. How can we make the most happen for this part of your body? And if it was done in all 3s, he would be there like If those threes were heavy enough to be considered the hard sets that you are saying and things that you should feel like in a Myo-rep, he'd be there all day. So it's,
but it makes sense. And eventually I think every bodybuilder is going to have to run systems that are just not symmetrical, you know? You have to specialize within what you specialize. Yeah.
Right. So it's not more, is this okay? It's more like, no, this is not just okay. It needs to be done at some point. If you're not, if you don't look like a trophy already standing there, a perfectly symmetrical trophy, then not only like it's actually encouraged, right? Once you're not a beginner anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Next question. From Umair Ansar, I'm sure I messed that up, but thanks for asking the question. How would you count volume for Myo-rep sets? Let's say you do one activation set and then rest 15 seconds and do 5 reps and repeat this 3 times. Would you say this is equivalent to 4 straight sets? That's the question. Let's start with what are Myo-reps? Leaving it to Bert. Okay, let's start with what are Myo-reps.
I can go to the bathroom now.
No, stay.
I just always have a bottle underneath the desk, Brad. That's how I do it.
That's a good idea.
I was kidding. But
Damn, I thought it was a good idea.
As long as we can't see it. So the creator of Myo-reps, Norwegian guy named Berg Fagerli. That's his name. And I might be saying it right, I might not. But
it's fun to say it that way.
He created a system where, you know, essentially what you're doing is you're extending the life of a set, and you're keeping it in that range where basically like you're activating all motor units. So a good example of this is like when we do a set of 10 reps, the standard bodybuilding set. Hey, the 3 sets of 10, right? You would, the first 5 reps would be pretty easy. You could probably chat with someone as you curl. And then somewhere around rep 6 is when we're like, oh, okay, it's getting hard. I really have to like drive like hard to just keep it moving at a reasonable speed. And then every rep after that gets a little slower. And then eventually your last rep is probably like significantly slower than 6, 7, 8, and 9. So all those reps where like the velocity of the weight is starting to slow down, those are full activation sets. So that is attention that's worth a damn. That is attention that is bodybuilders. When we speak of time under tension, it's not like a 60-second set. It's not a 50 rep set. You know, it's not just a shit ton of volume. It's those full activation reps that we're after. And there's a sweet spot for everyone in regards to how much we need to grow. But anyhow, that is what, you know, makes bodybuilding is like lifting generally above an RPE 6. With Myo-reps, what you would do is you would take that weight that you can do for 10 reps and you would stop about 1 rep short. So you'd make it up to 9 reps. So at this point, it's pretty similar to, you know, how you usually train. Usually first set, we do leave a few reps left in reserve. And then you would take anywhere between, I'd say, 5 to 15 seconds. Kind of depends on the size of the athlete and the size of the muscle group that you are training. So the smaller, the quicker it's going to regenerate. The bigger, obviously, you know, the longer it's going to take. And then you get right back to lifting the weight, and you would start the set not from like rep 1 necessarily, but it feels more so like you started back at rep 6 when full activation was starting to take place. So you would do about 3 reps maybe for a set of 10, and then you would put it down, leaving about 1 rep left in reserve. Same process. You rest a little bit, go back in there, and then you do another 3. So basically what you're doing is you're just kind of staying in that meat and potatoes part of a set. And as you can see, it's doing the exact same thing that, say, 3 sets of 10 would do. It's just that you would do, or 3 sets of, we'll say 8 to 10 would do. But what you're doing instead is you're getting your activation set first to make it to those fast twitch muscle fibers. And then you're resting up. You're going right back to like reps 6 to 9. And you continue to do that until basically the number of, and this is going to kind of answer the question, the total number of clusters along with the activation set matches the number of sets that you were going to do. So if you were going to do a 3 by 8 to 10, you would do 1 activation set and 2 clusters. And technically, like this is when we're talking about muscle growth payload, it's the exact same amount of volume. It's just condensed. So it's less time. And the benefit of this is, well, that's the first one, is just that you're gonna be able to chew through your work a little bit more efficiently. I see it also being something that over time can perhaps help you with the wear and tear and some of that, because of course a lot of reps, every rep in its own way is a risk, even if it's a full activation set. The perk would be the fact that it's since you kind of in that grindy part of a set, everything is pretty much a continuous 6 RPE and up. You really get to connect with the muscle. So if you're doing a lateral raise, you really get to play around in that zone where everything is firing, and so it can potentially help with the mind-muscle connection. And then the last one would be the fact that because you are removing a lot of those reps that are not full activation, which they still chew through substrate. When dieting, it can be, I think, a little bit more carbohydrate sparing in that it can, help you from, training yourself into a super flasky state. So yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's just, I think, a much more efficient way of doing it. And for low risk movements or movements that you don't necessarily care too much about getting stronger in, I think it's an excellent way to train. And I've been doing it for the past month or so, especially for things that match that criteria. So I would never do it for like a squat, right? Or a good morning, or a bench press where there's like this handoff that takes place, So yeah, I hope that answers the question, because I do think I got through most of it.
So like instead of a 3 by 10, which is 30 total reps, right? And you would do 10, rest a couple minutes.
Oh, you would do 9, because you probably won't leave 1 rep in reserve.
No, but like so you're taking so instead of going 10, rest a couple minutes, 10, rest a couple minutes, 10, rest a couple minutes, I'm just like making shit up. It would be like 10, take 5 breaths, maybe 6 to 8, take 5 breaths, maybe 4 to 6-ish, like, because you're going pretty much till you...
It tends to be, I think, if you do it right, about a quarter of whatever the activation set was. Okay. So if you're doing a set of 20, you could say with a set of 20 from 15 on is when it gets good. That's what you came here for. So with a set of 10, you're probably going to be doing clusters that are anywhere between 3 and 2. Yeah. Okay. Or 4 if you have good muscular endurance. But yeah. So.
And then that 30 reps. So like if you had, say you're talking about lateral raises and sometimes it bothers your bicep tendon or something. I don't know. Then you're essentially saving it from 10 reps saving that joint from doing more. Now, why would you? I guess some movement. I was gonna say, well, then why wouldn't you do like BFR instead? But I guess that would be because some movements aren't made for that either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people just generally don't like it.
Now then, the argument
more localized muscle pain.
Oh yeah, and then the argument would be, well, if this saves joints and saves time, why wouldn't I always train like this?
Because some movements it's just not safe. Like on a squat, your cardiovascular system would be, the issue. It's like, here you are, hey, you've been squatting for, like 4 minutes now, when you think about it, with the little rest periods. But yeah, your cardiovascular system would be the limiting factor. And then, for movements that you do want to be strong in, hey, when you think about it, even the reps that aren't full activation, they're still technique practice. So you're going to remove some of that practice. And then, certain movements, it's besides those two, and they often the things that are cardiovascularly too challenging are also just too high risk to do it in that state. So,
and so that's how you count it.
I do see this taking off, and it just being something much, because it just makes a whole lot of sense. Like like I usually do about 5 sets of direct arm work, right? And it's like, do I really want to sit here and do 5 sets of 15, or do I just want to do that one activation set and then do 4 clusters? And it's like, I'm good.
Yeah, and the clusters of a 15 end up being like 4s and 5s mostly.
Yep. And it took me about 3 minutes, and that's it. Yeah. How awesome is that?
Okay. How do you...
Would you use something like this for a competition diet?
I think it's great for competition diet because, again, you're leaving some of those carbohydrates alone because it's going to deplete you less overall because there's just less work.
Why did this just come up for you recently?
It's been a combination of just being much more efficient with my time, and then also I've been not so excited to train as I have been in the past, maybe, and it's I don't want people to worry. It's something that just happens,
Cycles.
So yeah. So I'm like, you know what? This cuts down like 30, 40 minutes at the end of an upper body session. So I'm gonna roll with it. And the only thing that I did, for example, yesterday with straight sets was my dumbbell press. Everything else was Myo-reps.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. Honestly, I feel that our kids are going to be like, holy shit, like grandma and grandpa, y'all did straight sets? So dumb.
Okay. Thank you for all of that, Bert.
There's actually a few questions on here on Myo-reps.
Yeah.
I think Bert pretty much hit all of them. To be honest.
Yeah. I was going to say that was like a big topic because when you do something, Berto, everyone wants to do it. So you have to remember. So any decision you make, you have to be prepared to explain it fully on this podcast.
I wonder how much longer I'll have that power for eventually.
Well, the fitness industry is changing, so
yeah,
only 5 years.
I'll be out of style soon. Yeah.
Okay. Next question from U999 IPF World Champion. The question is, body dysmorphia. How does one detach self-worth from progress and results?
Oh, I know that guy. He's all over the place. He needs a picture in his Instagram.
Yeah, he doesn't have a... It looks like a bot. He didn't have...
It looks like trolling name, doesn't it? But so polite and encouraging. So, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So kudos to you, dude. I've noticed you, and you're pretty awesome.
That's nice.
And we pretty much all love this question, too.
Yeah, it's a good question.
It is.
Well, first off, there's not an answer. But there is, but there isn't. Right? Like, there's...
So individual.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the thing that hashtag fixes it is different for everybody. And if it's real and true, maybe the episode... What is it? Eating behavior. The episode, I think it was, 117, that just came out, Eating Behaviors with Amanda Rizzo and Steve Taylor, so our nutritionist and our mental health counselor, talked about this quite a bit. Like true body dysmorphia, or how your body image can be an issue as a physique athlete and all that stuff. So check that out also, and then we will also talk about it right now. And I guess I'll give us one more leading thing is in the last episode, I think it was before or after, actually, Berto, when me and Eric were talking. I think we'd already turned off the recording or something, and you had said, it's funny how little we care about our physiques, but people want to look like us. You're talking about you and Eric. You're like we're supposed to be these leaders of industry, and we are professionals at what we do, and we get on big stages, but we also don't care. And so how do you... And we've talked a lot about in this podcast about how the less you care, sometimes the better it is for your physique. And what do we mean by that?
I was undressing the other day, and I was like, damn! Like, straight up, like, for real. Like, for a minute, I was like, shit! Like, that's... Like, a lot of people are like, that's impossible, But it's just like, I don't care, Because I'm so much more focused on, like, the process, the training, the education that comes with this. Like, I think one thing that weight training has done for me is it's made me a much smarter person. Like, one thing, like, the deeper you get into this, the less you get in returns, like, physique wise, but the more you get, like, you have to be scrappy and you have to be logical. And you just have to be sharper up here to get very little in return. So that part to me is like, that hunt is like my favorite part, so much that I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, we're kind of doing it to look a certain way, but it gets lost in the hustle, I guess, you know? Because yeah, people sign up to look great naked in the gym all the time. Like that's the main goal, you know? But I think you do this long enough, it just doesn't even matter as much anymore, you know? I know that I don't care.
Yeah, I agree, but I think the route to there is different.
For everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, honestly, though, out of the five of us, you're probably the one who I can't ever think of a time you've told us about or been around where you were like emotionally affected by how you look, as far as like you ever felt like you looked like shit. And I think the rest of us have ever at times felt like we looked like shit, and I don't think you ever have. Because you went from skinny kid to... I was saying, you've been a skinny kid, you've folked yourself to no end, but it was always... it never seemed like an emotionally sensitive thing for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my dad would tell me, son, you're getting fat. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
but that, you know what, that's a good way to put it, though. It's like, it is entirely how you feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
because when you were 250,
there's people who look great who are nuts, and like they think they don't, you know? We know a ton of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you guys get to that point where we were at peace?
I had a big turning point in about 2000, and I want to say 15, when I came to the realization that I no longer cared about training to compete. I came to the realization that whether or not I compete, I'm still going to train. And so it kind of I had to ask myself a question. It was like, why? If you're not going to compete, why? Why train? Why? And at the time, remember, my equipment was on my back porch here, you know, and it's like, why am I going to go out there in the snow and squat? You know, why am I going to go out there when I can see my freaking breath in the air, you know, and do whatever? And after a lot of reflection, because I mean, I had pretty much decided at that point I wasn't probably going to compete in bodybuilding, possibly ever. What am I going to do? What's going to keep me, you know, on this track if I'm not training to get bigger? And you know, like they say, detaching from the progress and the results. I just made up my mind that I really enjoyed getting underneath the bar. I really enjoyed the personal, you know, not only conflict that comes along with fighting with yourself, telling you to do one more rep or keep better technique and don't cheat on this rep, you know, etc. That was something that I really enjoyed, and I only can go about 4 or 5 days without that struggle, you know. Mm-hmm. And so and I even wrote a blog on this, is that, you know, Eric did a little what did he call those YouTube videos, the science and
anecdotes and observations?
No, the one before that.
Oh, say what? Those ones?
That's it. Yes. Science. It was science and application with Eric Helms. Yeah. He did a thing where remember, they studied the kids, and the kids, when they were drawing, they were just drawing because it was fun. You know, they had a really good time drawing. But once they were given a reward, they didn't want to draw anymore. Mm-hmm. It wasn't fun for them anymore. And I remember coming to that conclusion. It's like, I'm not going to train for a reward. I'm just going to train just because I like doing it. And now things are totally different. I've moved my equipment from my back porch and into my spare bedroom. And, you know, I go back there, and sometimes my son and I train together, which is freaking awesome. You know, that's the best environment that you can get in, really. Sometimes I go in there and I just get something done, and other times I watch a movie and train for 4 hours. You know? But no matter what, I really love that time of day. And there's sometimes I don't want to do it, and then I don't. And then I miss it for 2 or 3 days, and then, you know, I got to get in there. I got to get in there and get it done. But like Bert, I can honestly say that I feel like it makes me, like Bert makes it makes him smarter. For me, it makes me a better person. It actually makes me a better Catholic, because the discipline that it takes to follow God's word is kind of the same discipline that it takes to get in there when I know I don't want to, you know, to finish off my checklist, because the whole week has gone great, but I don't feel like doing these one or two things that I need to get done, you know? So yeah, that's getting away from the progress and the results and the competing. It's probably the best thing I ever did for my training as an individual.
Yeah. When were you the most miserable about your physique? Brad. Sorry, I know when I on Skype, you can't tell that I'm looking at you. I'm like, why aren't you talking? You're on this side of my screen, obviously.
An Oprah moment.
Yeah, it's been a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too thrilled about my physique right now. The difference is I just don't care.
Well, that's what Berto was talking about, though.
Exactly.
When he was saying,
yeah.
like, I just, yeah, that he's like, you know, it's easy for me to gain muscle because it's easy for me to gain weight because I really don't care. It's just,
yeah, exactly. But there was a point because it was before my last competition season in 2014 when Bert and I were actually on stage together. This very picture that you posted for the questions today. It was about a year before that.
okay.
I saw a picture of myself. We went camping, and I thought I looked great. I still had abs. You know, I had like a 4-pack, and I had some traps, you know, and I saw a picture of myself walking behind my nephew. And I saw the picture, and I was like, holy mackerel, I am a fat man with a 4-pack and traps. And I hated it. I hated that picture. And that was kind of what spurred me to get ready for that competition season in 2014. Because once I got rolling, I was on a roll.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2005, my goal in 2005 was to be 205 pounds. And I really didn't do it the right way. I didn't know as much as I know now. And I got up to 205 and I absolutely hated it. And in 2006, I competed and met Jeff.
Yeah. Okay.
How about you, Andrea?
I know.
Would you find peace?
When I started functional fitness, yeah. So I luckily, right. If I've been an athlete, like literally competing in shit since I was 6 years old, and I'm 33 now, right? And there was only like a 5-year period there where I can say where I was very into and interested in with all of my being bodybuilding as a sport, and I would say that whole time was the most dysmorphic, like crazy. I like at the same time it was so fun, right? Because anytime I get really ingrained into a sport, it's everything. But in hindsight, the self-judgment, all of that was like the worst during that period. And I think that directly is because I care so much about my sport and because I was so frustrated that I didn't look like the top whatevers, and because I don't know, but I think that's with anything I do that I super care about. I never think I'm good enough, so it's kind of not just body dysmorphia. It's like anything. So it is a character like flaw, I think, in general. But once I did get into the deepest, darkest, it was a lot of education. So you guys had a lot to do with that, right? 3DMJ and all the content that I watched of you guys before y'all knew who I was. The nutrition pyramid helping me set up my priorities and so it was first recognizing like you can't be lean forever. I know you want to look like this and you think this isn't good enough and you're scared to eat because you won't look good enough and like all that shit, right? So the first thing was like, okay, I realized 3DMJ and all these other smart people have convinced me that to even be better at the sport, and I still did care about it that much, I can't look like this for the long term. So it was like, okay, one is recognition. Once you realize that, it's having good people in my life, like Alberto, who was coaching me, and like my boyfriend, who has been a competitive bodybuilder too, not making me feel judged about that. You know, it was okay and encouraged to see me eat. And then at the time too, when I was at my leanest ever, I was a YouTuber, and so giving that up was a big gateway to getting my physique out of the public eye week after week. Was a smart thing to do also. And then, like I said, I think finally the thing that broke the camel's back or whatever, the final straw was becoming a performance athlete again and having functional fitness training goals and learning all these new skills and learning the Olympic lifts and just having a lot of new and fun physical challenges that had nothing to do with how I looked. And I was excited every day. I remember for a lot of years with bodybuilding, like your eyes open and you're like, I wonder what I weigh today. And you like feel your stomach. Okay, is it going to be a light day, a heavy day? Maybe if I take a shit before I weigh in, it'll be a new low. Like all this weird shit, right? And that very quickly turned into like, oh, I get to snatch today. Okay. So remember what you learned last time. It's you know, this and that. And then after snatches, because you want muscle up soon. All right, so these ring dips are really important. I know last time you were doing that, and you saw these videos on Instagram last night on how to improve your ring stuff, so you get to try that today. So it's still the level of obsession, but it got away from body obsession to performance obsession, which I thrive in personally. That's how I grew up with gymnastics. And so then that went, you know, you don't notice it every day, but then I look back, I was like 3 months in, I was like, I'm kind of fat. I don't care too much. And then like 6 months later, I was like, oh shit, I kind of look kind of good, you know, because I'd been eating for the first time for a long time. And I was just as active. And then a year passed and I was like, I'm having a lot of fun. I don't care about how I look, but I also look the best that I've looked since I started caring about how I looked 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So it's not like it's a one and done thing, right? But it's just like those were all the little steps it took. And it's just like being reminded of how much fun I have at the gym. I literally have so much fucking fun at the gym. Mm-hmm. And it's easier to have fun at the gym when you're fed.
Yeah. I think everyone kind of has to go through that phase at some point. Mm-hmm. So if you're going through that, like, don't feel weird about it. Just make it a priority to find some sort of peace.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that, like, because Brad and I both said, like, it took. Well, you care about your training. I know y'all both. Like, we all super love our training.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. But I think we've talked about on other podcasts, there's almost always a period where you don't have as much muscle as you want. This is for most people that I've coached and been around. You don't have as much muscle as you want, and so you know that you have to train harder, right? But training harder makes you hungrier, and being hungrier makes you a little bit fatter. And so there's like always this period, maybe a year, might be 5 years, depending on who you are, where you're not big enough, but you're also too fat in your eyes. And it's like, once you can break through that, and I couldn't break through it until I had performance goals, which made me, like I said, it was okay to be fat for a little bit. It's like, it only took like 6 months till it all kind of started leveling out. But I just couldn't give myself that 6 months when I cared too much about how I looked. That was all. Okay.
No, I think especially the dudes are not okay with feeling that way, you know, whereas, you know, I think women in general tend to be a little bit more self-conscious about their appearance, whereas like dudes, we don't talk to each other about it, you know. Yeah. Like, you know, Brad didn't like text one of his like dude friends like, I feel fat, you know, and like that didn't happen. You know, he kept it to himself. So yeah, it's normal, but if you make it a priority, you could figure something out where you are still detail orientated about your physique, but it's not driving you nuts because it's not perfect.
Yeah. And some people, it takes longer because you just literally can't deal with it. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. Like if you're like, I can only get a certain amount of fat without getting crazy. And then there's people like you, Bert, and you're like, I'm going to use as much as I fucking possibly can till I know I'm stronger, goddamn.
Yeah. My end goal is old Seattle Seahawks running back Marshawn Lynch. I want to look like that, fat and muscular. Like,
Okay.
it's like the worst body ever, but boy, will it be functional and it'll lift things. Just want to be gross looking.
See, and like most people don't say that. That's why you're not a good candidate for an answer on this. Most people won't say that, Bert. Although some people will. And you have to do that.
Is over there smoking a cigarette with a pot belly.
But Bert likes the thick chicks too, and so you have to always stay bigger than the girl.
It's like the Titans.
Clash of the Titans is how you want to be in bed. Okay.
I had a joke, but I won't.
Don't do it. Don't
I think we helped him out.
Okay.
How did we get on that topic?
We did good. Okay, we only have time for one more.
All right.
Here we go. This is from R. Buff. Says, is there any science to explain the phenomenon of muscle maturity? Would love to hear your anecdotes and opinions as well. We do talk about that kind of a lot.
Yeah.
What does that mean, muscle maturity? Whoever wants to say.
Old man muscle.
Old man muscle, and that's a good thing. Okay, why is that a good thing? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's just that I think one of my friends that I used to compete with talked about that grainy look, that grainy, hard, kind of like marbly look to muscle when it gets older and matures. And is there any science on this? I don't even know. I would think we would have to rely on our science officer, but it's just that I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but when you crack granite and it's really rough and kind of like hard and like could kind of cut you almost.
Yeah.
You really only see that in athletes that have trained for obviously a long time and they're a little bit older, you know.
Usually, not always though, but yeah.
Not always, yeah, but
it is a duration of training, right? Because it made me think immediately of like Matt. Like when I see like Matt Ogus was here not too long ago, but like every time I hug him, he's just like a bigger and tighter ball. You know what I mean? He's just like this little nugget, but he's like but it's like Jeff's forearms. It's like when someone's been lifting a long time, they're just like, I don't know. It doesn't remind me of like marble. It's just like they're forever cut in a. They're not bouncy. They're not like they don't look watery, even though they might be full. I don't know.
it's almost easier. Like Jeff and I will talk a lot of times about the opposite, baby muscle. When you know it's a big muscle, the person's got some well-developed muscle, but it's just smooth. You know, it doesn't have that real grainy, striated look to it. It's a big muscle, but it's smooth. You know, and Jeff and I, we always call it the same thing. It's baby muscle. You know, it's those muscles that have been gained like in the first 1 to 3 years of an athlete that's done good training, good consistent training. They've built a lot of good newbie muscle, but it just is smooth. It doesn't have that really hard kind of grainy look to it. And it's almost easier to think of that kind of a muscle, which is ironically, if you think about Matt, like when you saw Matt in 2010, and then you look at him now in 2019, you see the differences.
Yeah.
He was just as cut, just as symmetrical, really probably maybe arguably just as muscular, but smoother. It was softer. And like when you see him now, and like when you saw him when he was getting ready for his last show, the muscle, while the size kind of looks about the same, it's got a totally different look to it.
Yeah.
Like it's just got, when you squeeze a balloon, when you squeeze a balloon in your hand and the balloon pooches out between your fingers, the kind of muscle maturity that I kind of think of, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if there's any science on it.
I know. I think we just made it up.
I think it'd be very unlikely. You'd have to find.
Well, and then is it
subjects.
even a
Have you been
skin
training
thing?
for 30 years? Yeah.
I know, right? Is it a skin thing? Maybe.
I think that's a huge part of it is
your skin changes
it's just
as you get
it's
older.
like I mean, just think of an old man's calves. You know, they probably didn't look that way, you know, when he was 20, you know. So you just kind of have that going on all over the body. You know, we don't store too much fat in, you know, the side of our shin and our calf typically. Well, men don't. Just that happens with
Jeff's
the addition
forearm.
of weight training.
Yeah, look at any photograph of Jeff and his forearms, and that is a mature forearm. They're just like trunks, man. And they're always like he moves his fingers, and you can see all these four things moving. You know, I don't know. If the listener has never heard us say this in relation to like something we've seen, it just doesn't make any sense on a podcast. I'm sorry I asked it. But we have no science. Okay, so I think we're saying we have no science. Anecdotally, we all can like see it and know, but we don't know exactly why. And there's just some shit in the art of it, you know? Like when Bert can look at a picture of someone who's not even his client and say some shit about, I don't know, there's some shit Bert will say about someone's physique. I'm like, how do you know that? And he's like, I don't, and he just like knows. I don't know.
He needs guacamole. Give him some guacamole.
You need some avocado ice cream.
Maybe we should have a whole podcast on that, like all kinds of shit that we know but we can't explain.
Yeah.
And the only way that you know is by like we should create flashcards of like, this is a guy with mature muscle, and this is a girl who stores her body fat in this area, and cardio for her should probably look like this. Why? We don't know, because I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the experience level, you know.
Well, you have to get better in some way, so it's just like, hey, I guess simple answer is like,
well, I guess it might be just them. Yeah, maybe it is a function of like, all right, you've already had your newbie gains, and maybe you don't weigh super different, but you're definitely putting on muscle over time. So the layer of skin covering your muscle as your body comp improves gets thinner and thinner year round. So maybe that's just what it is, or a way to explain it.
Yeah, but you look better. Your muscles will look better as you age, and that's a pretty cool thing.
You know what? A good way to explain it maybe is like how when people have baby fat on their face, and like their body might not have changed over the last 5 years, but maybe it's a male who went from like 18 to 24 years old. Even if he's not training, just like people's faces change. Maybe it's like that, but like their whole body. I'm just reaching for shit now.
Even in my son, I've noticed like when he was about 12 or 13, he had that nice round baby face. And now he's starting to have like a jawline and like cheekbones.
Well, and I get that that's puberty, but
I think it's a certain amount of maturity, you know. It just happens.
I don't know. All right. We left on a weak note, y'all. I'm sorry, listeners.
We should can we make up for it?
Yeah, you want to do another question? You have time?
I think they have time.
Okay. As long as you and Brad have time is actually what I was asking. Listeners obviously have time, but we appreciate that question. I know. Okay. So, Brad, if you have to go, you obviously don't care about the listeners, is what he said.
And we did have a question in reserve, if I remember right.
We have a few. We have a few. I was just running on time. This one's okay. Oh my God, this is so fitting for when this episode comes out. Also from you, 99999 IPF World Champion. How can self-coached individuals ensure they have good form on the big movements? Funny you should ask.
Yes.
There's a lifting library when this comes out, will have just come out. Like the day before. So I'll go ahead and start with that's one of the ways, but there's a lot of ways. So one of the ways would be to get some good resources and compare yourself against them. So somewhere in the last 30 minutes, you'll have heard me talk about an ad for the lifting library that just came out. That is one resource. But resources could also include an online coach looking at your videos, but it could, never mind, self-coach. Resources would also include, like for me, learning the Olympic lifts, I Instagrammed for absurd amounts of time, finding good lifters, filming myself. What are the differences? Here's my video over and over and over. Here's all these other great people. Never mind that a lot of people lift differently, but you can find commonalities. Like if So I think comparison is a really good learning and education tool, but it starts with filming yourself. I think that's number one. Sometimes you don't even need a comparison if you're just always filming yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can see
Yeah,
changes.
that's a biggie. You know, a lot of times people think that, oh, well, you know, they're filming themselves for the gram and, you know, because they're vain and stuff like that. A lot of times, no. It's just because I'm working on something and I got
Yeah.
to see if this looks like I want it to look. And sometimes it can be bad because I actually like my squat a lot better about 5 years ago than I do now. I wasn't squatting as much, but, you know, I like how it looked, you know,
Yeah.
better 5 years ago. But you gotta film yourself because especially like you said, Andrew, if you're using resources, if you're, you know, trying to compare what you're doing to what your resources that you're researching, you got to film yourself. You know, and you got to film yourself. A lot of times you'd be amazed. I remember one time when I saw my heel picking up, and I was like, "Wow, that ain't good. That's
Yes.
leakage."
Yeah.
You know, and I worked on that and stretched my calves, and then started kind of researching lifting shoes and Olympic lifting shoes with a raised heel and whatnot. And yeah, you got to film yourself, in my opinion. And just, sometimes you just got to watch them over and over and over and over again, and not out of admiration. You just got to pick yourself apart. You
I
know.
feel so naked when I don't have maybe a phone that's fully charged or something, and I can't record myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no idea. I did it for, man, like 8 years without filming anything.
Yeah.
And that's really crazy to me. And most gyms are okay with it now. You know, they kind of,
Yeah, they should try to stop
film.
you from it.
They used to try, yeah. And
People
now
bring
it's like,
straight tripods to a couple gyms I've been to.
oh, I
Like
bring
that
my
gym that
little
I took
tripod.
y'all to, Ignite, there's a girl there I know
Yeah.
that brings a tripod for her phone every session.
I'm the only one that does it in my gym, and like people are just like, this dude really does not give a fuck. Like, but
No,
like,
no, no.
'cause
Let me
most,
say, not this tripod. This girl brings one that's like 4
yeah,
feet tall.
no,
To
well,
the
even
gym.
like that, because like folks are usually like recording like this, like, you know, like
All
their
secrets.
friends. They're like, hurry up, and do the booty kick, do the booty kick. All right, we got it. Looks good. It looks good. So, but I think it should be a regular thing if you really care about your lifting.
Yeah.
It's really good data. I know that it severely helps me as a coach when I have footage of how my athletes are lifting.
And multiple angles, because I've fucked that up sometimes.
Yep.
Like from the side it looks good, and then you get it from the front, you're like, oh shit, you are crooked, or other things.
Well, don't ever underestimate the power of practice. You know,
Yeah.
you have to. I mean, even if you think that you're doing, you know, something wrong, there's never such a thing as in my opinion anyway. There's never such a thing as a bad workout. If you're practicing, you're working out. If you're practicing, you're training. You know, and you know, practice makes perfect. You know, Vince Lombardi's perfect practice makes perfect. If you want, you know, to be good at your big lifts, you've got to do your big lifts frequently. And yeah, there's going to be times when you're sore, and there's going to be times where you just have to use a sub-maximal load. Suck it up and practice and get the repetition in that you need. And then, yeah, on top of that, film yourself and pick yourself apart.
Yeah, and often too, like you said, soreness too made me think of like in general discomfort. Like if the big three, unlike again, say the Olympic lifts or something that requires really extreme ranges of motion, for like a squat, bench, and deadlift, which I think is what most of our listeners consider the big three. Usually, if something hurts, especially in a deadlift, you might that might be an indicator that you're doing something wrong that maybe isn't so like visually obvious. Like maybe you're not packing your shoulder blades. Maybe you're not. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is. Maybe your elbows are too high in your squat, and that's causing you to dump forward because your low back hurts because whatever. Like so, I feel like a lot of times, the more experience you get, like your body will tell you if you're doing something that's inefficient. I don't know, like watching your heels raise, yeah, but like if someone every time they squat heavy, they're, I don't know, some item of pain, and then you like film it and you can target it, or like another thing with, aside from just filming and watching other people who know their shit, would be like when you read the captions of people who know their shit, or read blog posts or read whatever, a lot of times people, especially in the Instagram age, don't read, but you can hear what people think about and their cues. And if you try them out and this pain goes away, it's like, oh shit, I wasn't doing that this whole time, you know? So I don't know, knowing yourself, your body can tell you when you're doing shit wrong, I feel like, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I go back, there was a lot of times where I should have listened to my body, but I didn't. And it was just like little things that made it so that it made the way I moved just unique enough where it was like, this is oddly enough, this is different enough relative to like the base form that everyone should have, you know? Like my squat is pretty narrow. It was too narrow for a minute there, but it's always felt that way. And, you know, had I taken, say, a more starting strength approach to my squat, like to me, it just feels like my guts are going to fly out of my like bottom half, you know? So it just doesn't feel stable, you know?
It's interesting.
So,
I'm the opposite. I have a very wide squat, like a super wide squat.
Yeah.
And like deadlifting, if you watch me sumo deadlift, it's actually really pretty, but I will always have hip pain. If I do it for more than like 3 or 4 weeks, like it's always going to fuck me up. But it doesn't look bad. So I think, I'm just made for, you can just be made for certain stances too. But, and I guess too, like picking your source as well would be a good, when you say how can you ensure that you're doing right, if someone tells you there's only one way to do it, that would probably be a bad resource.
Yeah, exactly. That is so, yeah.
And even if you're, I guess last thing, even if you don't have a coach, I think there are definitely ways that you can crowdsource your, like if you're on Instagram or you have, I would hope you have like a friend or two that lifts, and you can send them their video, or if not, you can hire a coach just for a form check, rather than an ongoing thing.
Yeah. I think really good athletes are also good examples, oddly enough, when it comes to this, because usually they tend to move really well without knowing, you know, like they just kind of, you know, it's like,
so even if it's not someone that's like, hey, watch me, I'm an educator, it could just be like an athlete that logs their training somewhere that you watch. Yeah. Good point. So that would be like, watch IPF's page. Everyone on there is pretty good at lifting.
Again, like Russ Swole, again, like everything he does, like even when he does his isolation movements, he's just so aware of his body as a whole that you're like, wow, like if I was coaching you, I wouldn't have to teach you to do that, because you already, he was doing his lateral raise the other day, and he's like just out in front where the shoulder's not jamming like into the socket. He's like right here, and he just, because he can feel things and he's very aware. So I think you won't look like them necessarily, because everyone looks a little different at the end, right? Because we're different, but you can pick up on a few things here and there for sure.
Yeah, and my favorite thing about what you said, watching athletes as opposed to someone who's trying to give you a tutorial sometimes, is that you can see the variation. Like you won't get stuck in being like, but my squats should be narrow because Berto's is narrow. If you watch 10 different people squat on the IPF page or whatever, you'll see that they're all different, which hopefully illustrates to you that like you have some options.
Yes.
Okay, I feel like we've ended on a much better note now. Y'all are so smart.
That was way better.
I agree. Yeah. Way better.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see y'all next season. Thanks so much for listening, guys. 3DMJ prides itself on keeping this show, our blog, and our YouTube channel as free and relevant sources of information for our community week after week. We also release additional free video courses as often as possible at 3dmjvault.com. If you'd like to help support our mission and our work, please consider becoming a monthly patron of our endeavors. Go to patreon.com/team3dmj and donate as little as $1 per month to our cause of helping educate and grow the drug-free bodybuilding and powerlifting communities worldwide. You can definitely choose to donate more, and if you do so, we'll send you discount codes for future use on any of our paid products. But any little bit helps, and we appreciate your monthly support in any amount that you see fit. So again, you can start assisting the team at patreon.com/team3dmj. That's reon.com/team3dmj. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you in the next show.